God promised to lead his children out of bondage. He said he'd free them from Pharaoh's evil hand. He promised to guide and protect them on their journey and lead them to the promised land. God's children were slaves in Egypt land, so God took Moses by the hand, said, "Moses, tell old Pharaoh to set them free." Now Moses wanted a way to get out, because in his mind he began to doubt. He said, "Lord, old Pharaoh ain't going to listen to me." Well, the Lord said, "Boy, throw down that rod," and Moses did, and then cried to God, because it turned into a snake as evil and wicked as sin. Then he cried again with an awful wail. When the Lord said, "Grab it by the tail," Moses did. It turned into his rod again. God promised to lead his children out of bondage. He said he'd free them from Pharaoh's evil hand. He promised to guide and protect them on their journey and lead them to the promised land. Well, God said, "Moses, I've got the power and I'll be with you every hour. Now go tell Pharaoh, set my children free." So Moses did, and the Lord helped out. He sent the plagues through the land about till Pharaoh said, "Just go and let me be." Well, it started out with a cloud by day and fire by night to lead the way till old Pharaoh suddenly decided to change his mind. He gathered together all his soldier band and all the chariots throughout the land, said, "I'll let the Israelites go some other time." God promised to lead his children out of bondage. He said he'd free them from Pharaoh's evil hand. He promised to guide and protect them on their journey and lead them to the promised land. Well, they got to the banks of the old Red Sea and started to cry and began to plead, and Moses fell on his knees there in the sand. Well, the Lord said, "Boy, just trust in God. Why, all you got to do is lift up that rod, and over those mighty waters stretch forth your hand." Well, Moses did as the Lord commanded, and the waters parted, and there in the sand they saw a path that led to the other shore. And the ground was dry, so they walked on through, and Pharaoh's army thought they would too, but the waters fell, and they ain't been seen no more. God promised to lead his children out of bondage. He said he'd free them from Pharaoh's evil hand. He promised to guide and protect them on their journey and lead them to the promised land. Now, you know, when you step back and really look at the story of the Exodus, there's a lot of it that sounds completely crazy by human logical standards. It's hard to wrap our brain around that. You know, and in fact, the Bible is filled with tales of God making what we would deem insane requests. I could start listing them for you now, but you can go look them up for yourself. Besides, I may want to talk about others of them on other episodes. But not only does God seem to give make these insane requests, but he also then provides the power to make them totally real. Our focus today then is insane reality. And some would say that is a great description of the concept of Christianity itself. And you know what? They're not wrong. If you try to wrap your head around what it means to be a Christian, even who God really is, it literally could drive you insane. Because there's no way to make all the pieces fit. See, we like to make pieces fit. We like it when a story makes sense. We like it when you can see how it happened. The story of Moses and the Israelites crossing the Red Sea with the water parting. I have seen countless shows on TV trying to explain how wind or earthquake or whatever tides, they explain this. In order for it to have happened the way it's told in the Bible, there is no explanation. Now, some would say, well, that's because it didn't happen the way it did in the Bible. It really happened this way because we can explain this. I don't buy that. That makes sense, but it requires no faith whatsoever. And faith then becomes the thing that a good Christian believer holds on to firmly, and it also is the thing that is ridiculed by the unbeliever who says, well, that's just a convenient little thing that lets you explain everything away. And again, looking in from the outside, they're not wrong. But honestly, one of my favorite stories of insane reality that comes out of the Bible is found in the book of 1 Samuel, primarily in chapter 14, though the details of it really begin in the previous chapter. And I'd like to spend the rest of our time just kind of looking at that story, because while it is an example of insane reality, it also is one that just feels like it is reality, that there is truth to that. There's elements of the story that we go, wait a minute, but then you see how the pieces come together, and it kind of satisfies that logic of the human brain. But then in the end, the story, you're just left going, how, what, wait, because that's God. That's the insane reality. And so here we go. Starting in 1 Samuel chapter 13, it starts in about verse 16. I'm not going to go over all the specific verses. You can go check it out yourself. You see on the screen there, it says 1 Samuel starting in verse 16. But we see that the Philistines have invaded the land of Israel, and they have also rounded up all of the blacksmiths in the land, and they are under Philistine control. You can only get work done by a blacksmith if you have permission of the Philistines. And so that's the scenario in which the story takes place. Why would the Philistines do that? Why would they care about all the blacksmiths? Well, because they wanted to prevent the Israelites from having any weapons. See, they had managed to disarm the Israelite population, which made it easy for the Philistines to take and rule them, take over that whole kingdom. But we're told there's in 1 Samuel 13 verse 22, there is a verse where we find out that not everybody is unarmed. There are some, a very small group. It says, so on the day of the battle, not a soldier with Saul being the king of Israel, and we hear about Saul. He's the one that David, when he was a boy, plays the harp for, and he calms Saul. And Saul is an interesting study in and of itself, because he becomes king of Israel. He's a good and decent fellow, but by the end of Saul's reign, not so good and decent, and he falls prey to some questionable things. And so that's a whole nother story. But for right now, Saul isn't really even our focus. 1 Samuel 13:22. So on the day of the battle, not a soldier with Saul and Jonathan, his son, Saul's son Jonathan, had a sword or spear in his hand. Only Saul and his son Jonathan had them. Now, that's the first element of this that's like, if you just read that verse, you'd be like, that's not true. That can't be true. Well, and all those gathered, and only two guys got swords, the king and his son. That's only people. Come on. But again, back all the way up to verse 16, and you see, but the Philistines did this on purpose. There's a reason for this. They also probably went around and confiscated all the weapons, and I'm sure they didn't do so with much respect. And anything could be used as a weapon, probably, for that matter. And if you wanted, again, anything done, anything created that could even be used as a weapon of any kind, you had to go to a blacksmith, and they were all owned now by the Philistines. So, it's some would scratch your head and say, that doesn't seem, but it is plausible. It is plausible. So now we have this story set. That you have this bad situation, and clearly the Israelites want to drive the Philistines out. However, it's kind of hard to drive out an invading army when they have weapons and you have none. That makes it very difficult. But so then that gets us into chapter 14, which is where the really great story that I just love is found. And so we'll just begin in 1 Samuel 14, verse 1. One day, Jonathan, son of Saul, said to his young armor bearer, "Come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost on the other side." But he did not tell his father. I tell you, what is wrong with kids? Sneaking out and not telling their parents. But now, in this case, you've got a guy who is the son of the king of the land being occupied. You talk about a golden fruit to grab onto. If you can't get the king's son. That makes a lot of sense. But and Jonathan, not only is he the king's son, but he's one of only two people apparently have any weapons at all. and he says to his armor bearer, hey, let's sneak away secretly, not tell anybody where we're going, and go spy on the enemy. Now, the problem, of course, with this plan is, already I can tell you that if they go there and something goes amiss, ain't nobody coming after them, because nobody even knows that they're gone, and even if they did know they're gone, nobody knows where they went. And so this is already from the outset an insane plan. But I mean, hey, what could possibly go wrong, right? So we go on and we read through chapter 14. And again, I'm not reading it to you in scripture. I prefer to just tell you the story. I encourage you to go back, look at especially the first part of chapter 14, and you'll see where the story all comes together in there. But so the two of them, Jonathan and his armor bearer, they arrive at the site where the Philistines have gathered, or at least a garrison of the Philistines have gathered, and they scope out where they are. Now, the enemy has the high ground. Now, I'm not a military genius, but even I know that it is insane to try to mount an attack against somebody who has the high ground, because they can just, fire down on you, and they can just attack down on you. Everything you want to do, you have to climb up towards them, and there's nothing you can do in secret. They see everything. They can just wipe you out. You don't really stand a chance. Your casualty rate is going to be immense and high, and right now, there's only 2. So, with all that being the case, you'd think that Jonathan and his armor bearer, the Jonathan especially, would go, all right, so now we see where they are. Let's get back to the camp and tell everybody. But no. That's not what Jonathan does. No. Instead, Jonathan has a plan. We see in 1 Samuel chapter 14, verses 8 through 10, the following. Jonathan said, come on then, we will cross over toward them and let them see us. Meaning the Philistines, let them see us. If they say to us, wait there until we come to you, we will stay where we are and not go up to them. So we're not going to run. But anyway, I digress. Let's finish on with the scripture passage. But if they say, come up to us, we will climb up, because that will be our sign that the Lord has given them into our hands. Now, think about this for a minute. This is the plan that Jonathan has come up with. We're just going to show up. We're going to stand and wave our arms, whatever. We're going to say, hey guys, look who's here. And if they say, wait there, then we'll just wait here, and they're going to come to us, and we'll be dead. If they say, come on up, then we're going to go up there. But it's 2 of us and a whole bunch of them, and we'll be dead. But no. If they call us to come up, no. Then we believe that's God saying that, they've delivered them to us. Again, logical mind says, what in the world? Armor bearer should have been going, okay, Jonathan, you've been out in the sun too long. But instead, the armor bearer simply says, hey, I'm with you. Whatever you want to do, I'm with you. So clearly, equally insane. So basically, the plan is reveal themselves to the enemy and see what happens from there. It's a very interesting strategy indeed. But see, here's the part that is amazing. Here's the part that is just absolutely absurd. The plan works. It actually works. See, the Philistines, they invite them up. And Jonathan said, remember, if they invite us up, that's a sign God has delivered them into our hands. Whose hands? These 2 guys. One is Jonathan, and the other is his armor bearer. So they're the only ones with any weaponry whatsoever. and there's only 2 of them. And they go up there, and the Philistines say, come on up. And the 2 of them go up there, fully believing that God has delivered the Philistines into their hands. And in 1 Samuel 14, chapter 14, verse 14, it says, in the first attack, Jonathan and his armor bearer killed some 20 men in an area of about half an acre. Jonathan and his armor bearer walk away unscathed, but they just mow through these Philistine warriors because God has delivered them into their hands. Now, the remainder of chapter 14 describes how Saul and his forces hear that there is commotion in the Philistine camp, so they go check it out. And in the confusion caused by Jonathan and his armor bearer, the Philistines actually turn on each other. They start attacking each other. Now, how insane is that? But that's what happens. And of course, in the process of all of that taking place, you know what the Israelites get to pick up? They get to pick up some weapons that got dropped on the ground by Philistines. Either Jonathan and his armor took out, or they take out each other. Jonathan's plan was either an example of complete and utter insanity that he got really lucky with, or it was an incredibly strong demonstration of faith that God would provide them the reality of a much needed victory. I prefer to believe that it was the second option. So, things like that still give me hope. Do I understand what happened that day? No. Do I understand what happened in the Exodus when Moses led the people out of Egypt? Absolutely not. I do not. I don't even pretend to understand that. There are people who research those things. I'm not one of them. But I will tell you this. I think that a lot of us miss opportunities for God to demonstrate that kind of insane reality to us because we overthink it, because we are too busy trying to figure it out. We are too busy needing to control the details. We are too busy wanting to actually fully understand so that basically we could be driving it ourselves rather than give it to God. And amazingly, when we do that, we don't see the level of victory and the insane reality that Jonathan and his armor bearer witnessed. So, my challenge, may each of us avoid overthinking and in doing so fail to reap the rewards of following God's plan into insane reality. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Sundays with Paul. I look forward to seeing you again next week.